All right, and now we are down to the final soft skill of the week and the top 5 soft skills of 2019 as created and researched by LinkedIn. It's come down to a great list of qualifiers. Now, who might the winner be? It's come down to a lot of great decisions, a lot of worthy candidates, but the winner is creativity. Creativity has been listed as the #1 soft skill for 2019 that you as future employees and future professionals need to be working on to develop. And creativity can be developed. It really can be. And so we look at it and say, well, now what? What if I don't feel like I'm super creative? I don't feel like I am the best person to fit this soft skill. Let's think about it and let's go over it today. First and foremost, I want to know, what do you think is the greatest invention of all time? What do you think it is? Is it the wheel? Is it Chick-fil-A? Is it the phone, the iPhone? Was it the iPod? Was it something technology based, or was it something for another part? Was it the car, automobile? What do you think is the greatest invention of all time? Whatever you think it is, take a look at the creative process that person or people or group took to build that product, to build that great thing that we have today. Whatever you think it is, there had to be some creativity invested behind it. And then evaluate your own self here at the beginning. Before we even talk about it, how creative do you think you are on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being Mr. H and 10 being Steve Jobs. Where do you think you are on the scale of 1 to 10, creative-wise? It's okay to feel like, you know what, I'm not the most creative person, but where do you think you fall? Where do you think you fall? Because where you start is something that's going to allow us to then move forward and understand where we need to get better at. How much do we need to get better at? And depending on what we want to go into, this will definitely help us out. So those 2 questions right off the bat hopefully get some insight and some thinking going. #1, with creativity, did you know that 75% of people have creative insights in the shower? That is crazy. In the book Wired to Create, Unraveling the Mysteries of the Creative Mind by 2 men named Scott Barry Kaufman and Caroline Gregor, they did lots of research and they found that 72% of people have those creative insights in the shower. And you probably are saying, yes, I do. That's where a lot of people have their most ingenious thoughts, because we are free. We're not really thinking about the weighed down pressures of life or what we got going on the day before, what we have coming up in the upcoming day. We are just in that present moment, and we just feel for some reason that in the shower we are free. And so maybe we need to spend more time showering to not only be clean and smell great, but also get more creative insights. Another interesting look was that 70% of survivors that have experienced some sort of traumatic experience, psychological issue, have also become more creative because of it. Post-traumatic growth has been explored in hundreds of scientific studies. This is including the 2004 study in the Journal of Traumatic Stress showing that 70% of survivors experienced some kind of psychological change that was positive after a traumatic experience. Meaning that after the traumatic experience in their life, they all of a sudden had some light bulbs go off. Hey, maybe I should explore this. Maybe I should try this. Because they realize, hey, life is short. Or they realize, you know what? I got to start using my gifts. I got to start expanding my thoughts and expanding my creative sense here a little bit. So I thought that was very interesting. Another interesting stat is this. 78% of people believe that expressing personal creativity makes a real difference in their lives. That just by trying to be more creative, attempting, that it'll make a difference in their life that is real. They will feel more confident. They will feel like they are producing more things for themselves. They're bettering themselves. They're not just staying stagnant. So if you just try to express more creativity in your life, you're going to feel a real difference, both probably mentally and physically. Mentally, you might feel more open, more freer, more developed. And physically, you're willing to do a little more. You're willing to step out of your comfort zone. You're willing to take that maybe physical next step to the place you want to go. This one is interesting because, it's not always this isn't a positive one necessarily, but 80% of US and UK residents report that they feel pressured to be productive rather than creative at work. And this is from Adobe. They came up with this stat and they showed this in a study they did. And that's shocking because that means that so many people today are feeling the need to only be productive, and they limit what they do creatively because they aren't willing to take some of the risk. You look at Steve Jobs and Apple. He did something that was crazy ingenious, and now we all applaud Apple and all the things they've created, but they've never felt the need to just produce because of what people would say. They wanted to be creative and be on the cutting edge. That was what Steve Jobs was all about. And so now, more often than not, we have workplaces and people on teams and groups that feel like they only can produce, and they feel the pressure to do so, and they are feeling like they're told to limit their creativity and not try to expand themselves and expand what they can do. That is going to be a downfall for us, and that's why creativity has been the #1 soft skill for 2019, because people are seeing that needs to make a comeback. Creativity needs to desperately make a comeback. And then finally, there was a study done by a company called Fast Company. They also have a website and blog. And they polled CEOs of various companies, and 60% agreed that creativity was the most important skill to have in a leadership role. This was followed by things like integrity, influence, openness, dedication, humility, fairness. Creativity in a leader is super important, and especially as we move forward here in the coming age, when creativity is taking on its own brand, so to speak, with everything being created from scratch, companies, products, ideas, thoughts, opinions. So if we're trying to be leaders as well, we have to be creative. We have to be willing to think outside the box and never limit what we can do for our group and for our people. We look now at creative. Why in 2019? Why is this the #1 soft skill for 2019? You might be asking that question. A lot of things went into it, a lot of research. When LinkedIn did this poll, when they put together this ranking, they did a bunch of work, not just on asking CEOs and business professionals, but they looked at hundreds upon thousands of job listings and postings to see what were jobs asking for. What was the biggest need that was being asked for people in hiring positions? And creativity was by far the overwhelming biggest reason and biggest post reason for a job. Hey, you need to have creativity to do this. And so it means in 2019, there's new job skills required. Jobs are constantly being updated. They're constantly changing and evolving. What you do this year won't be the same next year. What one job is doing now won't be the same in 5 years. What happens in 5 years, there'll be probably 10, 15, who knows how many more jobs that aren't even created yet, that need new skills, that need new specific talents. It only comes with being creative. If you aren't creative, you're going to struggle when the new things come around. You're going to stay in the same old rut because you can only do limited things. So being creative means you're able to adapt and move to new skills. You're able to adjust and do those things that are constantly needing to be added to jobs. So new skills are always being required. The other thing is bigger, faster, stronger. With new innovations, with new ideas and thoughts that will change our world and workplace, we got to be ready to be creative with it. You think of bigger, faster, stronger, you think of the athletic body and people getting, in football and basketball and baseball, guys getting bigger and faster and stronger than they ever have before. Well, that is also, I think, a great analogy to our world today and just the world we live in. Creativity is being so enhanced. It's being taken into so many new ways and taken in so many new features now that we have to adapt to being the bigger, faster, and stronger group that we are today in society. And you only do that by being more creative, by adding creativity in whatever job or area you are in. We're always advancing. You mean, think about it. Technology is the biggest one you can always throw out there, but we're always advancing, like policies, like skills that are needed. So as we advance, getting bigger, faster, stronger, the creative people will last a lot longer. With creativity, there's a question though. Is it skill worthy? Is creativity a skill or is it a talent? That did spark some debate when it was listed number 1 in 2019, and overwhelming majority still believe it's a skill. And I believe it's a skill. Now, yes, some people are more creative than others. They're just born that way. They have that inclination, but that can't just be the end-all be-all. We got to still pursue being more creative. We can enhance our creativity. We can work on it. It's a skill that can be honed. A guy named Tony Wan, he put out, he's a blogger, and he put out on his Twitter, hey, I want to get your opinion. Is it a skill or is it just a talent or just something that we just demand? You either have or you don't. And 60% said yes, it is a skill. It is something that can be developed. So it's a good reminder that no matter where you are at on the creativity scale, wherever you list yourself 1 through 10, you can improve that. But you got to put in some work. It's not going to come naturally. You got to put in the work, but you can enhance it. And so it's enhanceable, it's developable, regardless of how much we have to start. He even asked a number of people what their idea was, and there was Esther Wojcicki, a journalism teacher and author of a book called Moonshots. She said creativity is a mindset. It's a way of looking at life. If you look at life in the standard way, there's no creativity involved. It's just copying. Creativity means thinking outside the box, thinking in ways that requires you to believe in yourself and take risk. It is not a skill, it's a mindset. And I happen to agree with that a little bit too. It's a skill, but you also have to have the mindset that goes with it, that I am creative. Mindset means you have belief in your skills. You have belief in what you think and what you create will produce good things. And so as it's a skill, also take it on as a mindset. A guy named George Anders, who wrote who's a book author, he's also an editor at LinkedIn, he said this: creativity has picked a clever, infuriating spot right in the middle of the continuum between very teachable skills at one end and practically unalterable traits at the other. It combines elements of both. And so what he's trying to say is it is a developable skill, but it's also a skill that is kind of in us. Some people are born with that creative trait. Steve Jobs, creative trait in his DNA. He had something that no one else did. But for the rest of us, we can develop what we have. And so don't remember that. Don't forget that. And then finally in 2019, it is in demand. That is why it is number 1. Bottom line, it is a soft skill that employers and people are always on the lookout for. You're always going to be being set apart if you are more creative. You are always going to have an upper hand. You're always going to have an opportunity awaiting you if you show that you have creativity in your past and in the things you've worked on. It's in demand. No matter what category or no matter what job you go into, creativity is definitely in demand, and that's why in 2019 it's the top soft skill. So with creativity, there's 3 things I think we got to be, okay? And the first one is be an original. This is something I took from a guy named Adam Grant. He's a Harvard psychologist. He's very well known. He's got a large following on LinkedIn, through his blog, through his podcast. He has some really great stuff out there. I encourage you to take a look and listen to. But he's also has this very popular TED Talk about being an original, an originalist, and how those people are different than anybody else. And so to be more creative, we got to sometimes look at being an original. And so he gave these 4 surprising habits of original thinkers, and here they are. 1 is original thinkers, they're always late to the party. I hate being late, but this kind of makes some sense here. I hate not showing up on time, but this makes sense. So, Adam himself admits wholeheartedly that he is not a procrastinator. He's a precrastinator, meaning he gets things done way before they need to be. He's going to wake up early. Even one time throughout his life when he was younger, he would wake up at 5 a.m. to get better at his Nintendo video games. And this sparked a newspaper article, as you see there, about him who would play the game of Nintendo and would play it nonstop till he mastered it. And he was going to work really, really hard at being really, really good and being proactive in getting this done. So it sparked the article, The Dark Side of the Nintendo Video Games. He also looked at, is very popular among new business ideas. And so one thing he did to kind of study this concept of how original thinkers are late to the party is he would task people with coming up with business ideas. And some people he would put in a group and he would ask them to come up with it right away, like on the spot. Other people, he would send them to play a game called Minesweeper for 5-10 minutes, and they would do that, and then they would have to answer the question. And he found that the people that kind of were given a task to do, to procrastinate the real reason for the question, actually had better ideas. They were a little more creative in their thinking and the ways they went about it, rather than having to do it right on the spot and do it now. So sometimes being original means showing up late to the party, and they're a little bit of a procrastinator, a little bit. The second thing, the surprising habits of original thinkers, is they are improvers, not movers. So they looked at a study and found that over 50 product categories that were first to the market, you would call those movers. So those are the originals. They're the movers in the product world. Failed 47% of the time, while improvers failed only 8% of the time. Meaning that the group of people or person that came behind the original mover actually did better. And so original thinkers aren't always the first to come up with the idea. They aren't always the starting point. They are just sometimes the people that take what has already been tried and sometimes failed and developed it even more so. So being more creative doesn't mean you come up with everything on the spot. It means that you use what's around us. You use the ideas that others have, that others have tried to have, and then you take it and you further it and you develop it and you caretake for it. Third, original thinkers have lots and lots of doubts. So Warby Parker is an eyewear designer. They're an eyewear online business selling eyeglasses. And Adam Grant had the chance to invest with these guys who started the Warby Parker eyewear. And so he had the chance to invest, and he kept asking them, hey, okay, tell me about your product. Tell me about your business idea. I want to know what I'm investing in, if I'm going to put my own money into it, which I don't blame them. And so eventually the inventors, the guys who created the business, they weren't really sure. They took summer jobs. They made sure they had internships. They even went to the length of making sure they had set up full-time jobs after their grad school graduation, because they weren't really sure if this Warby Parker thing was going to work out. They really weren't sure. And so eventually Adam Grant just said, okay, these guys don't seem like they have things together. They don't even have a website up. They seem like they're planning on this being a failure. They're not really all in to this Warby Parker business. Turns out Warby Parker is now worth and valued at $1.75 billion. They were able to figure it out, and so they had lots of doubt. They weren't all in and sure on it. That's okay. When you're being creative, when you're being an original, you might have doubts. It's okay to have those. You don't have to feel like you can, run through a brick wall with your idea or your creation. You're going to have some doubts sometimes, especially if it's new and it's different and it's unique. But you can still push through. You can still go with it, and you can still succeed. And then the final thing that goes with the doubts is, I didn't even know this myself, but Martin Luther King, the night before the March on Washington, he was up till, they say, up to 3 a.m., even later, rewriting his speech for the next day. One of the most iconic speeches he ever gave, and the one he's known for at the March on Washington, he was up rewriting it mere hours before he actually gave it. He had some doubt about it, but his creative sense led him to use that doubt to make it better and better and better, and then it is what it became. And then finally, what really scares original thinkers is them failing to try. Not just them failing, but them failing to try. And so you ever hear the phrase, it's better to have loved and lost than never loved at all? That would be an original creative thinker. They are so caught up with the fact that I don't want to just not try at all. I know I'm going to fail if I don't do it. You know, if you can start a business that can fail, but you can surely fail by not even starting the business at all, or by not being creative at all. So an original thinker, someone that is that way, is more scared about the failing to try. Thomas Edison failed, but what he kept him going was like, I don't want to just give up on this. I don't want to never stop. So when you're an original, you can never give up. Failing to try is worse than just failing at all, because you have no chance of being that creative genius if you don't try. Second, we have to be a developer. You have to take time to do the research, to take time to read and learn about things. That'll help you be more creative in the areas you want to be creative in. If you are trying to be in a business, well, you need to research the market field. If you're trying to be in athletics, well, you need to research what's on the trend, what's trending upward in that area. You need to take time to develop your thoughts to be more creative. If you don't take that time, you're never just going to automatically become creative. And then you see what the world needs. An example I always think of is when I was younger, Spalding had the Never Flat basketball. It was a basketball that had a pump inside it, which was crazy. But you could just push this button and out would come this pump handle, and you push it in and bam, your ball was back to regular inflation again. That was amazing. The world saw a need for it. Spalding said, here you go. So as you're creating, see what the world is needing in your area that you're interested in, and then find ways to add to it and create something for it. Take ideas and expand on them. That is something that you can do if you are to be a developer. And then with creativity, you have to be sedulous. Okay, what that means is this: a sedulous person is someone who works hard and doesn't give up easily. They never give up. With your creativity, don't give up. Don't give up attempting and trying, figuring out and failing, and then trying again. If you give up, you're never going to be able to have that creative breakthrough. You're never going to be able to develop that creative skill. Being creative means it takes time. It takes effort. And probably, and more than likely, it takes some coffee. I'm drinking that right now. So being creative takes that time, but you can't give up when the first failure happens. That will never allow you to succeed. Imagine what would happen if Steve Jobs would have given up after his first failed attempt. If Thomas Edison would have given up after his first 100 attempts at trying to figure out the light bulb. We would never have light today. So being a creative person means being sedulous, being a person who never gives up and is always working, never stopping until their dreams come through. So here's a little activity you can do. You can take on your own. There is a document you can get that has 12 circles on it. Okay, 12 circles, clear open circles. And the goal of this activity is to take 3 minutes, so time yourself for 3 minutes, and then have as many drawings or sketches fill those 12 open circles as you can. Each one has to be different, each one has to be unique, so you can't just draw 12 smiley faces, for instance. Everything has to be different. And so this is going to test you and push your mind to being creative, and then in a limited amount of time. So try to see what you can do. See how far you can create and what you can do in 3 minutes. And test it out. It's an easy way to get your mind to get going in the creative sense and push your limits here. Well, we've finished up our top 5 skills for 2019. Number 1, creativity. Number 2, communication. Number 3, collaboration. Number 4, adaptability. And number 5, attention and time management. We'll see how these things go moving forward in 2019. I would ask, how would you rearrange these top 5? Would you change them in any way? Would you have a different number 1? Would you have something that's not even listed in the top 5 in your top 5 for soft skills of 2019? Think about it. But these right now are the top 5 soft skills were looked at by LinkedIn for 2019, that if you can work on adding 1 or 2 of these to your repertoire, you're going to be better off. You're going to be more successful in the year 2019. Love hearing the answers you will have, but keep working on all of these. Keep working on yourself. Don't give up and just assume that you can never get better. You can. Every single day is an opportunity to get 1% better in some way, shape, or form. Take advantage of that today and have a great 2019.